Well, Andrew, I'm going to continue the Pacers talk because I mentioned them earlier. You just talked about them. They've been a league pass favorite for many
Yeah.
people, and for good reason. They have an incredible high-powered offense led by Tyrese Halliburton, who's very fun, and they also have an incredible low-powered defense that lets other teams routinely turn into the 2017 Warriors on random weeknights.
Uh,
Uh, and as it turns out, that's a great recipe for entertaining television.
yeah.
They've already played one of the games of the year, that 157 to 152 game with the Hawks in the
Yep.
in-season tournament, a game that did not go into overtime, 309 points in
It's insane.
regulation.
It's insane.
The difference between their offense and defense is what I'm so fascinated by because currently, per Cleaning the Glass, who filters out garbage time, the Pacers have the number one offense in the league and the 29th ranked defense. But due to the recent offensive explosion across the league, saying that it's the number one offense, 29th ranked defense doesn't really do the Pacers justice. Technically, we are talking about the most efficient offense in the history of the NBA and the second worst defense the game has ever seen. And the only thing preventing the Pacers from holding both titles, best offense of all time and worst defense of all time, are those damn Washington Wizards, who currently have the worst defense in the league, giving up over 123 points per 100 possessions, which is somehow over a full point per 100 possessions worse than the Pacers.
Oh, oh,
That in and of itself is kind of impressive.
yeah.
But it does feel like we're watching something extremely unique when it comes to these Pacers. But are we? Have there been teams that have been truly elite in one phase of the game while being hilariously inept in the other phase? To
Mm.
find this out, I went back in time using Cleaning the Glass. I went back 20 years as far as their database will go to find out more about what I'll call extreme teams. Extreme teams. Teams that go all in on one end of the floor while pretending that the other end of the floor does not exist. Now, I started broad. I looked for teams that finished top five in one phase of the game, bottom five in the other phase. There were 15 extreme teams in total since the 03-04 season. And some of the extreme teams you're going to remember. The 2017-18 Cavs, LeBron's final year in Cleveland. The 08-09 Suns, which was Shaq's only full season in Phoenix when he actually made the All-Star game as a 36-year-old.
Yep.
You got the 06-07 Wizards, which was Gilbert Arenas' final All-Star season.
Hmm.
And you also had the 03-04 Mavs, which was Nash's final season in Dallas. So some very memorable teams. In fact, all of those that I mentioned were the final, important year for those players on that team.
Yeah.
Now, if there's a team that best exemplified what it means to be an extreme team, it would have to be the early 2000s Seattle Supersonics. Seattle finished with a top three offense and a bottom five defense in three consecutive seasons from 2004 to 2006. Ray Allen, Rashard Lewis, Vladimir Radmanovich. Those teams knew how they wanted to play the game of basketball, and it
Yeah.
did not involve one end of the court. If you remember any of those Sonics teams, you'll remember that they weren't all bad. The 04-05 Sonics won 52 games and made it to the second round of the playoffs while being an extreme team. And that's the thing about being extreme. It doesn't really cap your regular season ceiling. 4 of the 15 extreme teams in the last 20 seasons won at least 50 games. Another was like at 47, another at 48. 50 wins is totally doable, even when you're only playing on one side of the court most nights. If anything, being an extreme team guarantees you a pretty comfortable floor in the regular season because no extreme team has ever won fewer than 35 games. It guarantees you a certain level of competence. In fact, 11 of the 15 extreme teams in the last 20 seasons made the playoffs. Success in the playoffs, however, is another story. Only 2 of those 11 made it beyond the first round. The first was the 04-05 Sonics that I mentioned earlier. They lost to the eventual champion Spurs in 6 in the 2005 playoffs. And then you had the 17-18 Cavs, who had LeBron James, lost in the finals to the Warriors. So unless you have one of the greatest players of all time, you kind of have to keep your expectations in check with these
Yep.
teams. But hey, at least you'll likely make the playoffs. What Indiana is doing, though, is unique even among this group. I mean, we're talking top 1 offense and bottom 2 defense. The only extreme team that came close to that was the 2020-2021 Portland Trail Blazers, who
Oh,
had the second ranked offense and 29th ranked defense. This was the post-COVID team. They made it to the playoffs. They were actually 42-30, which works out to about a 48-win team because that was like the 72-game season.
Yep.
They had that really entertaining 6-game series against the Nuggets. That series was tied 2-2. And I can fondly remember being at a bar here in Portland and watching Game 5, which was a 147-140 double overtime Nuggets win. Just like an incredible game.
Yeah.
And so, maybe that's the destiny of this Pacers team. Really fun team led by an elite point guard, playoff team who pushes a better team with a couple memorable games. I'd say that would be a successful season for the Pacers this year.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Andrew, what would really turn this Pacers season up a few notches, really get me going, is if those goofy-ass Wizards can play a little defense for a couple months. And that way, the Pacers can claim the title of greatest offense of all time and worst defense of all time in the same season. Because, folks, it does not get more extreme than that. That would be the ultimate extreme team. So go Pacers and go Wizards defense.
Go Wizards. I have a belief that the Wizards can do this. I think we can get there. Washington.
You've gone from believing they could win 35 games to now believing they can be the second worst defense.
Yeah. I just love this Wizards team for all the wrong reasons, probably.